Donald Trump takes control and John Kasich comes home.
From the Battelle studio at WOSU at Cosi, this is Columbus on the Record. Joining Mike Thompson this week, Laura Bischoff, State House reporter for the Dayton Daily News, Kathy Kandinsky, State House reporter for the Columbus Dispatch, Sam Gresham of Common Cause, Ohio, and Michael Miller, attorney and former prosecutor.
In the end, conventional wisdom won out. If a GOP candidate for president wins the New Hampshire and South Carolina primaries, he wins the nomination. For all the talk of candidates' lanes, ceilings with voters, and a brokered convention, Donald Trump dominated where it counted, in the ballot booth, and he now sets his sights on November.
I'd like to see a very high-level, policy-oriented campaign. If they treat me properly, I'm going to treat them properly. It would be a beautiful thing to see.
For John Kasich, his second campaign for president lasted much longer than his first, but ended far short of his goal.
As I suspend my campaign today, I have renewed faith, deeper faith, that the Lord will show me the way forward and fulfill the purpose of my life.
Mike Miller, we'll get to John Kasich in a moment, but first to Donald Trump, a question that every Republican seems to have to answer these days. Will you vote for Donald Trump?
I will not.
Oh. Why is that?
I voted every year, by the way, without any problem. One day I could vote. I didn't need a month. Yeah. But since 1960, I've had no problems at all. I've never missed an election. I'll vote the down ticket. I'm not voting for president this year. I'm just me. I'm dissatisfied with both.
But usually, I mean, Hillary Clinton, obviously, you're opposing her. It's not a surprise. But some people are saying we got to vote Republican. We've got to stop Hillary Clinton at least.
Well, I understand that. I don't see it that way. I hate to do that as a Republican, but I've been loyal my whole life. But I've always voted for certain Democrats I thought were better. If there were a candidate I liked in the Democrat Party for president, I'd vote for he or her. I just don't care for Hillary Clinton, and I certainly don't care for Donald Trump. So I guess I'm just out of it. I think there are other people like me, and we've got no place to go.
Yeah. He's not alone. There are a lot of Republicans who say no. Can Donald Trump unify the party as he says he wants to?
I don't think Ryan is making that very easy, the Speaker of the House, given his remarks today with regards to how he sees Donald Trump. Now, that may be a strategic position he's taking to extract something from Trump. But there have been a large number of notable Republicans joining Mr. Miller here in saying they can't support Mr. Trump. So I don't know if he can unify the party. And if he unifies the party, I ask you a simple question: how much party is really left?
I think, it's going to be interesting to see, because he says he wants to be a unifier. But in the past, every time he's kind of extended an olive branch, it seems to have been very short-lived. Already today, you heard him coming back at Paul Ryan for his remarks, saying he didn't think he was qualified to be a leader. So it's hard to imagine that he's going to be disciplined enough to unify the party, because once he starts taking on criticism, he seems to unravel.
Also, I mean, you'd think that he would start to try to appeal to the broader base of voters, and yet on Cinco de Mayo, he tweeted out a picture of himself eating out of a taco bowl, saying he loves Hispanics and the best taco salads are from Trump Tower. Again, it was kind of like, no effort whatsoever to try to extend an olive branch in that direction.
If anyone else had had a picture of ethnic Mexican food on Cinco de Mayo, no big deal. But given Donald Trump's history and calling Mexicans rapists and murderers and building a wall, nothing's going to work in that community.
He's 60-something years old, but he is highly immature. And I wonder sometimes, does he do this on purpose, or he has no idea what he's doing?
Well, interestingly, when he made a remark about, I forget a campaign stop, he came out and he said, if I just talked like presidential, you guys would all be bored with me. So it's almost like it's by design. This is marketing that he's doing to attract attention to himself. It's almost the way he sees it as.
Well, that's that soundbite we saw. Mikey said he wants to run an issue-oriented campaign, and if he does, it'll be a beautiful thing. Do you think it's going to happen?
Well, he may attempt on it. I just don't think he can stay in that vein for very long. I just don't think it's part of his personality. I'm sure he'll have many handlers that'll try and work things out, just like Mrs. Clinton's got some rough spots, and her handlers will try and do the same. But I think she'd be much more susceptible because she's much more savvy to working this stuff out. I just don't think he will. But we'll wait and see how it goes. But
is there anything he could do to win you over?
Oh, geez, Mike, I don't know. Certainly nothing I can think of that's really something that's realistic.
The thing with Donald
Take
Trump,
a lot, in other words.
It would take a lot, yeah.
the way he won was to tap into voter anger and to talk about bad trade deals, to exploit feelings on race and immigration. But he's highly entertaining, and he knows what gets ratings. And to be boring would probably be what he would consider his greatest sin. So I don't think he's going to stick to issues. I think he's going to roll like he has through the primary.
Yeah. Getting to John Kasich, what happened, Laura Bischoff? He never seemed to gain traction. Newspapers endorsed him left and right. He got decent-sized crowds wherever he went, but it never translated into votes.
This just was not his year. I mean, in any other year, his resume would have really looked very attractive to the voters. 18 years in Congress, time in the private sector, governor of a swing state in which seems to be well managed. But I think, again, the voters seemed very angry. They're tired of the establishment. They think that Washington is broken, and they want to look to an outsider to fix it. And John Kasich just didn't resonate with them. And he kept he went kind of counter to trends and stuck with his hugs and sunshine kind of message, his positive message, and it just didn't. It fell flat.
I think you're going to be surprised at what I say, but he did better than I thought he was. And I know he only won one state, but his presentation and the way he came across, with few exceptions, was much better than I thought it was going to be. So I have to give him kudos.
With, newspaper editorials, he got a lot of big endorsements. He comes out of it with very, very positive feelings towards the way he ran his campaign. I think those things will all play well for him if he chooses to run again.
Mike Miller, could he have? He got kind of a late start. He was like the 16th in, I think. But could he have run an angry campaign and been more successful, John Kasich?
I don't think so, Mike. Number one, I know he has a tendency to get to say things that make people angry. He could be abrasive, yeah. But no, I don't think it's his style that he can do that over an entire campaign. And I don't think you can out-Trump Trump. And I just don't feel there was much that he could do. I think Laura's absolutely right. And I'll say this, too, in the general election. The disaffected people out there that she mentioned, the angry people and so forth that voted for Trump, there's a lot of Democrats that way, too. This is not limited to the Republican Party. And I look for a lot of Democrats to sway over, believe it or not, and go with Trump. Not that they like him. It's just this whole thing. There's a big chunk of people in this country that are unsatisfied.
There is some speculation that Donald Trump might pick John Kasich as his running mate, and Trump kind of left the door open a bit this week. Here it is.
Well, I would certainly consider him. I mean, he's somebody that I've gotten along with during the debates. During intermission, I always seem to be talking to John.
Oh, yeah?
So we'll see what happens, but I have a good relationship with him.
Laura Bischoff, what are the chances of a Kasich or a Trump-Kasich ticket?
I tend to think it's very slim. I talked to a longtime friend of his who said he's probably run for his last elective office, and that it just seems the way that Donald Trump ran his primary campaign is completely opposite from the message that John Kasich was trying to get through.
Styles don't match, personalities don't match, philosophies don't match, ultimate goals and visions don't match. I don't think, even if he offered to him, they're so far apart. I don't see how they would work together.
I mean, it'd be the exact opposite. Usually the president acts presidential and the VP is the attack dog. In this case, Kathy would be the attack dog president and the more sane.
I think there's zero chance. I thought it was funny. Vice President Joe Biden joked this week that he was going to get picked as Donald Trump's VP. I think there's more of a chance of that than there is of Kasich.
8 years ago, Hillary Clinton refused to quit, even though it was very apparent that Barack Obama would be the Democratic nominee. She even won the Indiana primary that year. Now Bernie Sanders is playing the same game after he won Indiana's primary.
I understand that Secretary Clinton thinks that this campaign is over. I've got some bad news for her.
Hillary Clinton seems not worried about Bernie Sanders shifting her campaign resources from primary states to swing states and focusing her attention on her apparent November opponent.
I've seen the presidency up close from two different perspectives, and I think I know what it takes. And I don't think we can take a risk on a loose cannon like Donald Trump running our country.
Sam Gresham, why does Bernie Sanders keep running?
Fundamentally, he's an ideologue. He's an uncompromising, dogmatic individual who I have engaged a number of times in my life. I'm more center left than far left with a variety of issues. So I've run into the far left people, and I've run into a few radicals in my life too. He's the far left person. And ideologues don't give up and don't quit. They don't see their message not being received. Something's wrong if people don't understand what I'm trying to do, and if you don't get on board what I'm trying, you're missing the ball. So I think that's where he's at.
Well, it's hard to ignore the support that he's getting. It's also hard to ignore the support of people, and also the support in terms of dollars that he's getting. He can stay in and have good influence over some of the issues that are brought up, at the Democratic convention and in the campaign that follows. But the chances of him beating Hillary Clinton are about nil.
I'm surprised. I don't recall when Hillary Clinton stayed in well past it became clear that Obama was going to get the nomination. I don't remember her attacking Obama that much.
She didn't.
But Sanders is still kind of, picking at Hillary Clinton.
You know the one that blew me away? Now, these two ladies on the panel could help me. When she said she was unqualified, I thought that the women in America were going to assault him online. How if somebody said that about Barack and he was unqualified, Black America would raise up in a furor to go after them. I mean, just to say that and have it off your lip just amazed me.
Well, he went and dialed that back, though. But I do think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Sanders to kind of tone it down and stick more to the issues, because as the longer he stays in the race, the weaker it makes Clinton look. I really think that. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure from the Democrats. Who would have thought Trump would have been the nominee before Clinton?
Yeah, I know.
So, they don't want to fall too far behind. So I imagine there'll be a lot of pressure on him.
I also think that Bernie Sanders wants to pull the platform and pull the party further to the left. The Democrats a bigger percentage of Democrats are identifying themselves as liberals than in the past. The party is moving to the left.
It's ironic, Mike, you alluded to it earlier, that both Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders are on the same page when it comes to trade. So you could see how, as you mentioned, some working class manufacturing type workers might go, who were for Sanders, might go for Trump, if that's their one issue.
If that's their one issue, they might. I don't think he's going to get many of the Sanders votes, though. I think they'll be pretty solidly in the Clinton camp. Maybe a few people stay home and don't vote, but I think he'll get the vast majority. She will get the vast majority of the Sanders people. I think that's a pretty big jump, regardless of free trade or whatever, to go from Bernie Sanders to Donald Trump.
Sam, we hear a lot about, we asked Mike, will he vote for Donald Trump? And he said no, but there's a lot of Democrats who don't want to vote for Hillary Clinton. Could she face the same problem, perhaps to a lesser degree, but still a sizable problem of Democrats staying home?
Where are they going?
They might stay home.
No, they're not going to stay home because Donald Trump scares them to death. I always hear that argument from, again, the far left or radicals that they're going to stay home. But if you look at the numbers, that's not true at all. You make a good point, and
Thanks.
I'm trying to figure out the importance of the platform is most presidential candidates, once the platform is put together, they ignore it. So why are we fighting
maybe not the platform so much as just like the issues, the things that people are focused on. He has shifted it toward problems on Wall Street and college affordability. Those are and income inequality.
Yeah, okay, but
these are issues that a lot of people care about.
No, I've been around the block a few times. Trying to do something to the platform and make it more loud is a waste of time, because she already has her things that she's pushing on already, and some of them don't go as far as he wants, but they're similar.
But to attract his voters, she's going to have to talk about wage inequality and the wage gap.
I heard him threaten her with that, but that's not necessarily so. Here's Donald Trump. Here is Hillary Clinton. Okay, lefty, what you gonna do? He gonna vote for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, all right, we'll see. It's going to be an interesting 5.5 months.
It's going to be great.
We're going to make elections great again. While Donald Trump is looking for a running mate, Rob Portman already has one. Donald Trump. Whether he likes it or not, Rob Portman will be linked to Trump for the next 5.5 months. Trump will drive or suppress turnout. Portman will be asked about every controversial statement Trump makes. Portman himself has not said much about Trump this week, but his campaign issued a statement saying, as Rob has been saying in the past year, he intends to support the Republican nominee. Former Governor Ted Strickland is the worst Senate candidate in America. It's simple. Ted Strickland has enough baggage to sink the Titanic. We are going to win this race. Laura Bischoff, Ted Strickland does have some negatives because of the economy, one, when he was governor, first of all. But that's a big negative to have to run on the same party ticket as Donald Trump that Rob Portman faces.
Right, and it didn't help that Donald Trump suggested that maybe Rob Portman might be considered for a VP slot,
Yeah,
and the Portman campaign slapped that down as soon as possible. The latest public poll shows that Strickland and Portman are in a dead heat. Portman has got a $14 million, I think, nearly $14 million in his campaign account, and Ted Strickland has got just under $3 million. So he's got a big advantage on that end. But I do think that it's gonna be very challenging for Portman. The Democrats are going to constantly link him to Trump. He's going to do his best to never be seen in the same time zone as Donald Trump. I think it makes it harder for him.
Mike Miller, here's what's going to happen. Donald Trump's going to come to Columbus, Ohio. He's going to have a campaign rally. He's not going to have a script. He's going to do all his shout outs to Urban Meyer and to John Kasich and Rob Portman. You got to elect Rob Portman so Republicans hang on to the Senate. Is that the endorsement that Rob Portman wants?
Well, probably not, but I'm not saying that. I think Trump saying something like that is not going to have a really great effect.
It'll be a negative ad almost immediately.
Yeah, it will be, but I still don't think it'll have a great thing. And politics being what they are, Mike, I mean, I look at the ads that Strickland has run recently, or the Democrat Party against Portman, and it's just unbelievable to me. He votes for jobs to take him out of the country. And what they cite is NAFTA. That's what they cite, which Clinton pushed and wanted and so forth. But now they throw it on and they act like it never happened. Vote for jobs, it's his fault, not the president, and move on. All these ads that come down, there's so many, they're all spins. They have very little, to me, to be really honest about it. It's all a game almost.
Is there any way that that Donald Trump could help Rob Portman, because he has attracted some Republican voters who haven't participated that much in the past?
Well, today we spoke with Rob today, and he said that he thinks Trump's candidacy could be good because he's bringing people into the party and that he's not afraid to be on the stage with him. Now, whether you believe him or not, Portman, like other candidates, are having to make a decision. Either they're going to stand with Trump or they're going to distance themselves like you've seen John McCain and some others do. I think he's going to try and walk a fine line where he's not outwardly criticizing him, but probably, like someone suggested, trying not to be seen together. But that's his public statement today.
Wow. So he basically named Trump, not didn't use the "I'll support the nominee" line, and he said he'd be good.
Yes.
Wow.
It's an interesting reality that some people are not dealing with, particularly in Ohio. The last elections, African Americans were 10% of the population. African Americans are now about 13 to 15% of the population. If you look across the country right now, Barack Obama in 2012 did not win the majority of white vote in America. What won the election for him was African Americans, Latinos, and Asians who came out in significant numbers. So the demographic spill is significantly different. Now, the population that Trump is centered on was 65% of the electorate in 1980. That's white working class. Today, it is 36%. So there's a whole different set of numbers and geography and demographics that we are facing that we didn't in 2012.
Speaking of healing the Democratic Party, P.G. Sittenfeld, we're all wondering how active he might become in Ted Strickland's campaign. And this week, the former candidate for Senate released a video supporting Ted Strickland.
For just over a year, Governor Strickland and I both waged our campaigns in the U.S. Senate primary. I'm genuinely proud of the race we ran, but at the end of the day, the governor whooped my butt at the polls. In politics, there's a season for highlighting your differences, and then there's a season for coming together. to champion a democratic vision for the future, especially given the current stakes with the Supreme Court. I'm glad to support Ted Strickland this November, and I hope all of my supporters will too.
Will his supporters, Sam Gresham, support Ted Strickland?
Yes, unequivocally. I think people have a tendency to dismiss that there's a neutral component here. A candidate like Donald Trump is not a neutral component. This is a guy, by all the adjectives that you want to describe, are scaring independents and Democrats to death. By the way, I had another thing. That was a smart move on his part.
On Sittenfeld's
Oh,
part.
it was a very smart move, and I think he's probably going to be one of the leading candidates for governor for the state of Ohio, and I think that would be a smart move on his part to have done that.
All right, let's get to our last topic. The Ohio House seems poised to legalize marijuana in Ohio, medical marijuana. A House committee has okayed a bill that legalizes medical pot for 20 conditions. It sets out rules for prescribing and distribution. It tells patients how they can take it. Under the proposal, smoking marijuana for health reasons would not be allowed. Kathy Kandinsky, it does seem oxymoronic to smoke to be healthy. So is it reasonable that the House would say you can't smoke marijuana to take it medicinally?
Well, I think that's exactly the reasoning is smoking is thought to be bad for your health, is known to be bad for your health. So why would you legalize smoking marijuana? So the question becomes, how do patients take marijuana? And it looks like it's going to be mostly administered through, I guess, foods and edibles and that kind of
Oils,
thing.
I guess.
Oils.
patches.
Yeah, vapor or something.
You know.
Yeah.
But some of the concerns that have come up in other states that have legalized marijuana is the appeal to children and having it get into the hands of children. I think the more you put into edibles and things like that, suckers and things that might appeal to children, then you have a problem there. But I think they're trying to combat that as well.
How much of an issue is this for the pro-legalization marijuana supporters that you can't smoke it?
Oh, the Ohioans for medical marijuana they're very opposed to this bill. They're the ones who are trying to get on the ballot. They're collecting signatures now. They got a July 6th deadline, I think, to get 306,000 valid signatures. And they say that the bill is too restrictive, in part because there's no smoke in it. And they also say that it's going to put doctors in a bind, that doctors who are recommending the specific type and the potency and the rest of it, that almost crosses them into the border into what's really actually prescribing, and it puts their licenses at risk. And so they're saying that hardly any doctors are going to want to participate.
Michael Miller, you've defended folks probably accused of using marijuana, buying and selling marijuana, and prosecuted folks who've sold and bought marijuana. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm very cynical about it, Mike. I think they're opposing this bill because that's not what they want. They want to smoke marijuana. The medical use of it, to me, is just pretty much a front. They want it like California, where anybody can walk in, get a doctor. You have certain doctors that'll do it. It's like PI doctors and that sort of thing will sign anything. And that's what they want. They want to grow it. They want to smoke it. The really use of medical marijuana, somebody comes in with a Parkinson's or whatever, and they can take it and vaporize it. I think that's what the legislature wants to do. Give them that, but let's not open this thing to the whole world. And that's what the other side wants, in my opinion. But as I say, I'm a cynic.
But in the shadow of Pike County, there is hypocrisy, unbelievable hypocrisy. It's like that those growers are not growing that marijuana out there in southern Ohio and people are buying it. This is hypocrisy, Michael. I'm sorry if you can call it anything else you want.
I don't understand your point, Sam.
People are spying hypocrisy.
They're using it now anyway.
They're using it now anyway.
Well, that's not the issue. You're saying you want to legalize marijuana. If you want to say that's another thing. This is medical marijuana. And I'm saying the reason they're doing it, they don't want really medical marijuana. They want the whole thing wide open, and this is just a front to get it there. Well, if you want that, that's a different question.
If the bill passes, which it looks like it's going to, and becomes law, does that have any deterrent effect for these ballot issues in the fall?
Yeah, I think it'll definitely take the wind out of the sails for the ballot push. If the legislature gets something to John Kasich's desk in June, but I'm not sure it's going to, whip right through it's not on the fast track. It is on the fast track, but I think there's a lot of uneasiness, particularly in the Senate. And, if Keith Faber wants to run for Attorney General in 2 years.
Which is where the bill's headed. It's headed
right. I mean, is he really going to want to bring a medical marijuana bill to the floor?
I don't think. We're going to get to our off-the-record comments, and we'll start with Mike Miller.
Two big things quickly. I dread the next 6 months simply because we're going to be inundated with these ads being a swing state. I wish I were in a red state or a blue state because that's all we're going to hear from June on. And the other thing, if things, as the naysayers think that the Republican Party is really going to get taken by this, if they're right, it's a pendulum. I remember '64 when Goldwater lost, it was the end of the world. I remember Sam coming in to seeing me at one of these sessions about 8 years ago, laughing, how's it like to be a Republican, because we didn't win anything, and the next year we won everything. So thank God the country flips back and
Short
forth.
memories. Sam.
I'm going to enjoy the next 8 months because I think it's going to be a zoo. And I think all the issues that I think need to be litigated are going to be re-litigated, or they will be litigated in her 4-year terms as president. So I'm looking forward to it.
I'll talk about something off election. We have a statistic came out this week that Ohio's prison population is supposed to hit an all-time high by July, just over 52,000 people. And no surprise here, it's being driven by opiate and drug abuse. So it's a problem the state needs to deal with.
I have to say I love the ads because my employer owns a TV station, so it helps pay the bills. I'll go off topic as well and just say Happy Mother's Day to everyone.
There you
Well,
go.
not you guys, but
Thank you, Laura.
This week, business community, business leaders in Columbus have long opposed light rail. At a forum sponsored by Columbus Monthly Magazine, Alex Fisher, the head of the Columbus Partnership, all the big executives downtown, has a new theory, a new strategy to defeat light rail. He says Columbus does not need light rail because autonomous cars are coming. And to use his words, he says, we'll be glad that we passed on 1800s technology because everyone will be driving and riding in autonomous cars. So that's a new one. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online, Facebook, Twitter, and our website, WOSU.org. For our crew on our panel, have a good week.